Let's let the show begin. Hello, Will. Welcome to Friday Flow.
What's up, Nemro? How are we?
I'm doing good. How do you like my new shelves?
I was gonna say they weren't there just
Yeah,
yesterday, so
yeah, we're doing some
congrats.
upgrades. This is upgrade V1. We're gonna keep adding new things to the shelf, so as the weeks go on, you'll see new interesting things. So right before the show, Will's like, "Hey, Jordan, you gotta use the microphone on your laptop. The headphones aren't working." I didn't want to tell you yet, Will, but coming in next week, upgraded mics for both of us. So
Woohoo!
yeah, it's going to be a big deal.
Wow! We're bringing a lot of
I would have had them
resource
ready,
at the podcast.
but I didn't realize these microphones don't have stands. So we would have had to hold them up. So we'll wait for next week before we get these bad boys going. One of our engineering teammates has a whole audio setup, so he gave us some guidance on what to buy. So
We should also cover at some point in the background our affinity for Murphy beds. So maybe we can deep dive Murphy beds in the future as well.
AI Murphy beds. Yep, murphybed.ai.
Perfect.
Anyway,
Perfect.
Cool. All right, docket today. What is an agent? We'll get into that. SF Burgers. I'll let you know what that's about. Chat interface. Is it right? We'll find out. And then AI 2027. Those are our topics. Let's start out with what's an agent? I will kick it off because there is no right answer right now. I've heard a million different people say an AI agent is X, an AI agent is Y. I will tell you what I think it is, what I conceptualize an agent as, and I'd love to get your opinion. I think the difference between a standard workflow, like an AI workflow, and an AI agent is that in a workflow, there is an input, there is a straightforward way to get a result, meaning some input comes in, maybe it's an image, and the goal of the AI workflow is to say, this image contains explicit content or something like that. So it's going to go basically do one pass through and it'll tell you, yes, this is explicit or it is not. That's what I consider a workflow. An agent to me is when there is some form of recursion, some form of like infinite looping that happens within itself. And it's still a workflow in a sense because it is going through a process of work, but it's going to end. It's not going to end linearly. It'll go through and say, is there explicit content? And then also afterwards, it's going to need to do something else if there is explicit content. That's actually a really bad example, but let's just pretend that at the beginning of every workflow, it actually requires the results of that previous workflow. So it's going to kind of keep going in a circle until it comes out with the proper answer. I don't know if that was a good explanation of it or not, but does that make a little sense to you, in my opinion?
Yeah, I think that's a very true, valid way of thinking about it. I think, to your point, yeah, there's no wrong answers, I think, for what agents are. Certainly the way we think about them, and they are performing tasks, but they're performing them in probabilistic ways as well. So they're not any longer confined by if then that else type coding of them or setting up of them. So they're not deterministic in that sense. But as you've seen, and like what we do in our business and what others do as well, is build out a lot around the edges so that you can allow a sufficient amount of probabilistic work. That's what you want. So it's the feature, not the bug. But you kind of direct it in a certain way with guardrails, with prompting it to do certain things so that you get the intended behavior. And oftentimes that behavior, isn't going to look exactly like a very deterministic model of what a previous workflow might look like. And that's actually some of the true benefits to it. And so you can actually have a conversation with a lot of these agents. We'll talk about chat as an interface. But there's a lot of benefits from doing that rather than purely having to stick with the old school way of if then else type of flows. One version of this that I think of in sci-fi and in fiction was the car KITT. Do you remember that from Knight Rider?
No.
Oh, that was great. That was an 80s
No
show. But I think of KITT as an extreme version of an agent that's not quite sentient, but it's doing everything that the person wants using a conversational way of working, and then it has a bunch of tools that it can lean on to get the job done. You need to watch some Knight Rider.
Yeah, sounds like I have some homework. Yeah, but there's no right or wrong answer right now for what an agent is. I talked to 10 people, they gave me 10 different answers. That's my answer. That's Will's answer. We'll see what happens. Maybe there'll be a true definition down the road, but for now, leave it up to yourselves. Next up, SF Burgers. What is SF Burgers? I think I spoke a little bit about this last week. I was exploring using Lovable, Vercel V0. There's another one called Ready. There's like a bunch of these products that essentially allow you to, through a chat interface, create a website. So it does.
Can I just bring up, I heard first about SF Burger approximately 8 years ago when Jordan told me about his fascination, his idea, and his notes app at the time that was potentially what this might be. So I'm excited to hear what you've been up to with
Yes. Well, I guess we could go down a quick side tangent on that. 8 years ago, or it probably was more like 5, me and Caitlin, my wife now, bought sfburgers.com for $5, just a domain. And the idea was we were going to make a burger blog. We both love burgers. So we had a rubric. We went around to like a ton of different restaurants in San Francisco and we graded burgers. We were going to make a blog about it. We made some posts. We never put it up. We just never did anything with it. Fast forward 5 years, burgers are way cooler now. Smash burgers is like, a lot of burger controversy in San Francisco. I was like, okay, we have the domain. Let's do something with it. Maybe not a blog. But what I want to do is just use it and make like an upvote, downvote, or like an upvote, basically like a Hacker News style version of rating burgers in San Francisco. But I don't want to code anything. I don't want to spend any time on it. And so I was like, this is a perfect use of something like V0.
Vibe coding.
This is a vibe coding from what we talked about a few weeks ago. So first I'm going to show you the actual site that I built, and then I'll show you how I built it. And this is a very, very quick demonstration here. Okay. Boom. SF Burgers. It's actually not on the .com yet, but it'll be there shortly. Hashtag sfburgers.com. So this is it. I mean, it is so basic. It's very straightforward.
Love me a highway burger. Yes.
So actually, the funny thing is I didn't even have to add any of these as like samples. I just had it go out and find what it thought would be like the best burgers and just put them in. So here you go. And then here's like the full list. And then I have the top 10 up here. Okay, great. I mean, it's straightforward. You can upvote. It's awesome. It works. Woo. So how did I do it? I used V0 from Vercel. This is the entire prompt. I want to build a site called SF Burgers. I want it to rank. I want the top 10 to be up top, etc. And then I went through. It started to make a plan. Yep. Actually, it made a plan and then it just made the site. And it was just, this is the very first version. I didn't change anything, literally. So this is it. I just said, great, that looks awesome. Let's use Supabase, which is a database, so that this could be persisted so that I could actually add new burger places and also the upvotes get stored so it's not just like local. And it has a connection to Supabase, so V0 does. So I literally just signed into Supabase through V0, through this service, and it just did everything. I mean, I didn't do anything at all. I clicked a couple buttons, it set it up, and then I was like, great, now can we add data to the database of just like basically the top burger spots just in the database. Great. Let's see. Where is it? Here we go. So it wrote all this code. It added all of these things in here and it just seeded my entire database. And I'm done. Now it's deployed. I clicked the deploy button up here. I think it was this button. And then next thing I know, I'm deployed.
Boom.
Done. I have a SF Burgers, sfburgers.com coming your way shortly. Anyway.
Amazing little vibe coding side project there. And I wish you and Caitlin all the best. I'm sure it's going to get picked up in the local news and we'll be upvoting aggressively like Reddit.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome.
It's gonna be great. You've done some vibe coding. You've done vibe coding.
I've been known to dabble in some vibe coding. Yeah. I don't have any demos to show today, but
that's fine.
Yeah, thanks for the lead.
Yeah. Well, this is actually kind of a good segue to chat interfaces. This is also, there's no right or wrong answer. No one knows the answer to this yet. Is chat interface, which is like ChatGPT, is that the proper interface going forward for all of these chatbots? They're called chatbots, so like technically the answer is yes, but are they going to be chatbots in the future? How do we interact with AI just in general? Like right now, everything is centered around you're just typing in English or whatever language you're in, and it's giving you the answers back. It could be doing things under the hood for you. It just naturally understands your language. So is a chatbot the right interface? What do you think?
I think right now in 2025, the answer absolutely is yes. I think it took OpenAI by surprise, right? When they launched ChatGPT, they had no idea exactly how it was going to be perceived. They had API, they had a playground online that you could use, and we were using it before ChatGPT came out. But really, the ChatGPT was the aha moment, and that was because it was a chat interface. It just worked. It just made sense. And so I think right now that's absolutely the right direction. Interestingly, if you go on OpenAI's website today, you'll see that they actually have a chat interface. So now their website is more like a chat interface than it is a website, which is super cool as well. So I don't know if that's the way that we're going to go with websites generally, like marketing websites, but that was certainly an interesting approach. I will say my perspective, that doesn't mean that's where it's going to stay. So I think the big one around voice right now, the big concerns around that is about latency. And I think a lot of people, as they get closer to the hardware side, are able to bring down that latency and actually have it more like a human to human type experience. So I think text to speech, voice is going to be hugely important in the future. I think there's already a lot of people that use text to speech with something like Cursor, so they can actually be coding via talking to their app. I've seen a bunch of people doing that, which is pretty awesome. And then I'd just say the last point from my perspective is as models get more and more truly multimodal. So these are models that aren't just written by an LLM and actually includes video, text, speech, images, all these different mediums in the actual model itself. You don't need anything to synthesize between what you're trying to accomplish and how you input or output that data. It's just going to know. So it could be images in and voice out. It can be voice in and text out. It can be as free-flowing as you want and very, very natural. And that, I think, opens a whole host of new experiences that we today don't yet have, because I think the primary version of this was LLMs. It was just text. And so that was kind of the default input required to do anything. So even if you were to stick in an image, it would try and render that as text before it could pass it through the model, right? So we've defaulted this way. I think there's a bunch of exciting stuff in multimodal in the future. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think in general, I don't know. So I have opinions. I think the direction that OpenAI is going with ChatGPT is the right approach. It started completely text. They added markdown, compilation to it. So as it's spitting out information, if it's code, it'll understand that it needs to be formatted into like a coding format. If it's bullets, so standard markdown. Then it started to introduce like maps. So if you ask for give me 5 places, it can load it on a map and start giving you a little better UI. I don't believe you can click into things yet. I don't think it gives you interactive components, but I do see in general, us interacting with AI will be a hybrid of many things, as you said. I do think the two main focuses will be natural language via a chat and it giving you some form of response that is interactive. So for something like, if I'm trying to play something on Spotify, oftentimes, let's say I want to pause it, I probably don't want to go into Spotify and type out pause, right? There's a lot of button interactivity that I think will always be superior over text in certain situations. But then in others, I think writing it out in English or in any language is superior to having to go through a workflow of clicking a bunch of buttons. So I think finding the right medium there is going to be the right approach. I think in terms of speech to text, I have not coded yet with my voice. I'd be very interested to see how it works.
That's your homework for this coming week.
Yeah, I think it is. I know there's so many scenarios where you can't speak. If you're in a classroom, if you're in a meeting, if you're, working with other people. So if you're with a bunch of people, in an office and you are trying to code or you're trying to do something, it'd be really funny if everyone, instead of typing, was actually just saying out loud what they want to do, what they want their computers to do. So I think there's a time and place for that as well. But we'll see. I mean, when Neuralink comes out for everybody and we all have it, then we're not going to have to be speaking anyway. It will just be communicating with our machines. We will be machines. We'll be communicating with our machines. So that'll be, that's a ways away. That's at least 6 months away.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think what's cool as well is there's obviously VR. It's like, where are we going with this? AR, VR as well. Obviously, Meta have the Ray-Ban glasses. I don't know if you've seen Big Screen. Big Screen are super cool. They're trying to make kind of the lightest possible version of what VR glasses can look like. I think this thing weighs like 127 grams. If you compare that to like the size of the bit of the Apple Vision flop, there's a lot of form factor that needs to happen. How you interact with this is not going to be text, right? So I think there's some super cool stuff in the future that we can look towards as well.
Yeah, Alex, I actually have not heard of that. I have the Meta glasses, the Ray-Bans. They're not in any way, there's no AR, VR. It's literally glasses, has a camera on it. I like it
has
because
AI.
It has AI, but it's essentially, it does have AI, but it's essentially just using the camera to take a picture, process it, and give you the response. So it is cool, but it's not...
Yeah. I like that when Snap decided that they wanted to announce that they were a camera company instead of a social media company.
Yeah.
They launched their Snap glasses.
How are they?
TBD. TBD.
No idea. All right. Finally, AI 2027. Will has brought this to my attention. I'm just going to give you the floor.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. I don't know if anyone's heard about this. This dropped a week ago or so. On the timeline, it kicked off some interesting discussions in a few of my AI group chats. Essentially, a group of researchers and forecasters came together to really try and best case or explore what they think the future might look like. And this is their best attempt of trying to predict what it is. And what they're essentially saying is that by 2027, we'll have some level of super intelligence that's working on all sorts of crazy stuff. So they dropped that. Who is this? You can see on the website, these are the people's former OpenAI researchers, a bunch of people that worked in policy and safety. This is obviously coming from a bit more of a safety and alignment perspective than other areas. Obviously, Jordan and I are very AI pilled, and so we're always looking for the latest in the conversation. But they've kind of outlined where we're headed as best as they can predict. And the question is, are we all going to get paperclip by the end? That's still like a TBD. I know that Black Mirror just dropped new episodes this week. I haven't yet checked it out, but I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff in there on Netflix. But yeah, it goes through where we're at today. We're saying it has stumbling agents. They're fairly useful, but they're fairly unreliable today. There's obviously a lot of tooling and workflow that you can build around that to make them much more reliable, like what we do. But just taking them off the shelf, these agents are being less reliable. And this website's super cool. It's kind of give you a timeline and you can see kind of the speed of things picking up. This is written as a story. So this is them putting out a research piece for what they think might happen, but they're framing it as very much a story. It's pretty funny. They call this company that's involved in this Open Brain, so we can guess who that's meant to be. But they're launching, essentially the size of the first agent. Agent 1 is going to be multiple times the size of GPT-4. The Chinese leading company is called DeepSend. So there's a bunch of tongue-in-cheek in here, but you can really see on the side here, we're going from unreliable agents, working at now 13x human speed. We're getting coding automation as kind of like a key way of being able to evaluate like what kind of progress are we making. Now we're in late 2026, AI is taking some jobs away. We've got hundreds of thousands of reliable agents copying and thinking at 17x human speed. And then the new Agent 2 drops again. It's a multiple of that. I think the big change in the alignment and the intelligence conversation is when AI can pass between being a reliable human, and we saw like the Turing test get beaten recently, and now it's reasonably smarter than the average human. People think there's a level of AGI that exists today. We keep moving the goalposts for what that definition is. But if we think of like super intelligence, of like just being able to do anything that humans can do far better, really it comes down to using the AI to make more AI. So the real takeaway and extrapolation that happens in the story, and also how people think about it when they're in research, is AI being able to perform AI research. And so that's obviously a big part behind the scenes at all the AI labs. You have a huge amount of data scientists, PhDs, working on AI research, doing a bunch of tests and seeing what it can do. And so, if you follow the story through, super interesting. It thinks by April 2027, you've got 220,000 superhuman coders working at 31x the human speed. National security comes into this. Self-improving AI, that's where they're just doing all this research. And then it's going to be limited by essentially things like power and chips. And so if it's having to figure out how to best utilize those chips, it might just be deciding that it needs to get better and better. So it actually is going to just put all of its compute resource into training itself. And so like it could be maybe pulling away from all the other uses that we have for AI today, and it's solely dedicating all of its compute to improving itself. And that's really like where you can see it really take off. Anyway, it's a super fun read if people are interested. I like the end here. You can choose the ending, so a little bit Black Mirror-y. You can say red or green, which way do you want to go at the end of the story, and get a little bit of an ending there. But super interesting how it's thinking through both from the commercial side, the revenue side, but also from the security side. Will this become a Manhattan Project? Will the US government intervene and step in? How much data centers is it going to consume? How much power is it going to consume? I think it's an interesting thought piece on this. And
I agree. I will admit it was much too long of an article for me. So obviously I had ChatGPT give me bullets on what I need to know. So I can't say I read the whole thing, but I tend to stay away from some of these articles that are these publications on like a 5-ish year even this is like 2-3 year forecast on what they think AI will look like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The interesting thing to me was they think next year, 2026, is when AI will be able to contribute to itself in code. It wasn't necessarily right into the research component, but be able to proactively contribute to its own code base and make improvements on itself. And in my mind, that's awesome. A little terrifying. It's like the improvements in the progress at that point will start to compound so rapidly that it is kind of hard to fathom what can happen after that. So that's usually where my brain shuts off in terms of like thinking in like Black Mirror's style. I do find it fascinating to think about 2 years ago. If I read an article about where it's going to be today, would I believe it? And I think the answer is no. So if you think about it in that term, the next 2 years, some of these things that don't seem believable, are they believable when you think about it like that? Anyway, frightening. Maybe that's a good way to end it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is one of the writers of this piece is someone who predicted exactly what happened 2 years ago and took that on themselves. And so this is them making the follow-up case for that. They had a piece on like AI 2025, I think, where they predicted ChatGPT like moment, and now we got there earlier. And so this is them making an educated guess for what comes next. So super exciting. We'll obviously stay very much in. Yeah. This is a huge part of what we think about on a daily basis. We're not involved in the making sure that we have AI alignment and things like that. That's kind of currently still on the labs, but certainly how we think about this in our products, the guardrails that we build around this, the security that we put around this is all super important. So we continue to monitor all this stuff super closely.
Yeah, I'm also now looking forward to in 2027 to hear the 2029 piece.
Well, if you click one of those buttons at the end of this article, you'll better have a little fast forward sneak peek of that. So try it out.
All right. Well, thanks, Will. Happy Friday Flow.
Happy Friday Flow, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.